this world, 600 years ago, a group of criminals from the lands of Elise would be granted a pardon should they embark upon 7 labors in the name of the regent. It would be after the first of 7 labors that they would put down a rebellious prince who sought to reclaim his family's throne, that they would receive the moniker of laborers. They would be extolled for their services to the land as a part of the regent's scheme to keep the truth of the prince hidden. Thus, the laborers would ascend from common criminals to legends and be the vanguard for the era of heroes. Upon their final expedition, the laborers would be tasked with the slaying of a madman in the name of the Soul Penitentum. Considered to be a simple task at first, the laborers would embark across the sea to the lands of the Ferocians, where there the villagers would speak reverence of this man, claiming that he would end the suffering of the world by using his magic to slay death itself. The already fracturing laborers would continue their trek in near silence, reevaluating their current position and what prospects they could achieve should this information be true. Faith the Necromancer, who only was to resurrect her fallen father, was the first to openly change sides. As other laborers joined, so did the resolve of those who stayed behind. With heroes standing against one another, it was Legion, the tactician, who had held endearment to Faith, that caused the faltering in the moment. Blinded by his love and the love of his friends, he attempted to win back their companionship. A blast of magic from the traitors had banished the loyalists from the top of the tower and plunged them to the ground below. As the laborers cratered in the ground, the tower would activate, wounding the world and slaying Death, the Lord of Apathy. The only one who would remain was Legion. As he lay in that crater for weeks, unable to move his body, he would witness the end of the world due to the failure of his actions. His mind was slowly being devoured by his own guilt, his rage, and the fiend that haunted his every thought through that cursed helmet of his. He would feel his body enraptured by the grasp of the fiend that had given him so much power. On the last vestiges of will that he could muster, with his body being guided by such a terrible creature, he pulled himself out of that crater and marched off to find a means to fix his failure and reclaim his friends. Now closer to a ravenous beast, Legion would quest again and find new comrades to aid him in his travels. And although he was barely even in control of his own body, and couldn't tell if these allies were even real or a dream brought about by his own madness, it would be these allies that would lay him to rest upon the island of Sunderin. He would be the last to have a peaceful death. The tower's activation did exactly what the madman had hoped for. Like a sword, it slew death itself, but at the cost of wounding the world. The Hemomancer would not know the fullest extent of his dream until moments afterwards, where the wound would begin vomiting a thick, dark cloud. that slowly began to cover the world. This plunged the world into an eternal darkness. Although day and night were still discernible, the darkness made any sight of the sun an impossible act. With death slain, now would give rise to unchecked life. Those who previously were dead had their souls flutter back to corpses and skeletons, becoming the undead. For those who died after the tower's activation, their souls would attempt to find the throne of apathy for their final judgment, only to find it vacant. As such, the souls would attempt to return to a body, thusly restoring life in said body. They would be called famine. Famine would now roam the world as the last echoes of the people who they once were. Now in an eternal suffering they can only be momentarily reprieved of by the devouring of another soul. They are creatures of madness, with physical strength greater than that of a common man. They know nothing of the flame, or of their own actions. However, deep down, beneath the monster, there is that echo of who they once were. It is possible for people to witness famine doing the daily tasks and chores that they may have once did. To see the rotting corpse of a loved one continuing their business as a hollowed shell of who they once were. To bring low a famine that roamed onto your property, only to witness it boasting the combat skills of a fighter. Or to regard how sometimes certain famine will group together is a vision that deep down a person may remain trapped in that corpse. The many priests and clergy will speak of this as a one-off thing that could be explained by many circumstances, all to clear any doubt that famine hosts these last echoes inside of them, and to ensure greater safety for their people. Not 2 months after the start of the Era of Famine did the nations of the world send their best to reverse the failure of the laborers and a last hope to save their world. As the armies of civilization marched upon the tower, they would meet in battle against the traitor laborers and a grand host of undead and fiends. A great battle not seen since the times of the Granite King's conquest against the Pride of Darkness would take place. Hundreds of thousands would be slain. Rivers of blood would drown the horses, but nobody would remain in the dirt. For minutes after being slain, they would rise again and stand with this host as famine. As the host disbanded, they would break into war bands that still terrorize the world to this day. The fate of the Hemomancer and the laborers after this is lost to the history. The Middle Realm will be drowned in plagues that spewed forth from the wounds of the world. This would severely cut the population to 1/8 of its former size. The steppe tribes of the west would take the opportunity to raid the east for the hope of ending the curse placed upon them by death many a millennia ago. The Palekin tribes seek to inherit this world for their own cause. The Tar herds aim to destroy civilization out of an ancient hatred for having their own future stolen from them by the gods of man, dwarf, and elf. From the halls of Oyar Maz, demons spew from the latter out of the underrealm. The denizens of Perdicia bring with them their age-old practices of butchery and slaughter to steal the souls or brands of their victims to empower themselves. From the far northern continent of Nelafheim, The Northmen come raiding once more, smashing into the bastion of the Fortress of Dawn. Even one's own dreams are a threshold to be crossed. The villainous nightmares come through the dreams of mentally strong mortals to feast upon our emotions for their own survival. These eldritch creatures host a particular taste for the more extreme emotions. Together with the famine, undead, and fiends, they all are collectively referred to as the Terror. Even though the world continues to suffer, those of the Middle Realm have become apathetic to the way the world is, as it is the only world they know. Most refuse to look to the sky in hopes of finding a light. The coming of apathy was foretold, and so as the flame grants life to people, so too does it bestow a future to some. While 1 in every 1,000 may be born chosen by flame, most will not know of their significance. Those chosen by flame are referred to as harbingers, and are burdened with the lifelong task to end the era of famine and usher in a new age. To what age a harbinger brings may only be known to said harbinger. That is, if they actually know themselves. Not many know of the harbingers or of their prophecy. Most will brush it aside as someone who is either too fortunate for their own good, or not deserving of such a grace. The truth is that the road ahead for a harbinger is a rugged one, that only can be guided by the flame of their soul. They too, like the laborers, reach against the dark in search of the light. The path they walk is one that will condemn them to a life of solitude. And in the end of their travels, no matter who they are with, they will always be opposed in their task to bring a dawn for this dark age.